first parts of the academy. And that made me think about my own work as well. And I've got friends, and these are friends that over a long period of time, you develop a kind of conversation, an ongoing conversation. So these ideas that we're talking about, they aren't like sort of things inside your head. They're conversations that you're having with different people. And when students can enter into those conversations, other people can enter into those conversations, and then we share those. Sort of the publications is the kind of output, but that's all shared. It's the conversation that's vital. So part of doing scholarly work is nurturing these forms of conversation and to invite people into them.
So it's not about meeting in a cafe, drinking coffee, and to do this and that.
Sometimes it has that element. But mostly it's not mostly it's fun. It's I also at the European Summer School in Limerick recently spent a day in the pub with John Dixon talking about work and planning, other things. It was fun. It was a great day spent in conversation. So yes, it has got outcomes. It does focus, and we work hard, and we do stuff. We write, we produce, we are pretty, we try and care for the kind of production side of things as well. But generally the process is one of pleasure.
It's amazing because during the past years, academics have been perceived as boring people, and now it kind of makes sense that one gets a lot from informal conversations. And an idea can be nurtured in an informal way and becomes a formal thing used by people.
Labour is involved.
Yeah.
There's labour. So academic work it requires doing stuff. And in the process of labouring, like all labour, we transform things from one thing into another. I mean, that's what labour does. Labour is a way of transforming. From production is transforming something into something else, and that process of transformation is not mapped out in advance. It can't be mapped out in advance. So there's always new things and excitement and change, and the unnegotiated in that there has to be sort of thrashed out, to use that metaphor, as you're doing it. But the most important thing is to enter into the project, to start doing things. And when you start doing things, they start gaining a momentum.
And now I'm kind of like lost in this conversation, and I'll retract back. You've been doing quite a lot of work and writing, reading, and getting paid for reading and writing, so to say. Like, what keeps you going, really? What motivates you? Because certain people find it difficult to write or to sit down and read.
Both of them are, both reading and writing are difficult. So it's labour, and it's not like reading novels or watching movies. It's a different kind of reading. But both reading and writing are forms of activity that promote creativity. They promote you, they encourage you to start thinking in new ways and thinking new thoughts. And you have to get into, there's a kind of zone that you have to get into.
Yeah,
you have to be close enough to the material, and then you start working at it, and all of a sudden, ideas, lines of thought, I don't want to use it, epiphanies even. You have these little insights, and that is where there is great pleasure in that. To be a bit Khonzi here, Wittgenstein once said, when you read a poem and then you hear a piece of music that says the same thing as the poem, and in his wonderful understatement, he says, it gives you great pleasure. Now, that is pleasure. When you can connect two things, and reading and writing are forms of labour that help you do that work, that yield that pleasure.
Wow, that's powerful. I'll try to listen to that point. But yeah, that's powerful. And Kevin, I wanted us to touch on, I came across this nice little written paper. I don't know whether you remember it. It's the King, the Cure, and
The
newspaper man.
Yes.
And you spoke of stereotyping by implication.
Yes.
And it interested me. I actually wanted to hear you talking about it in more depth. What exactly is it?
So this is one of those ideas that's sort of been around with me for some time, and I'm starting to write about. And actually, all my writing, I'm writing at the moment, and I'm finding it's sort of the backcloth to all my thinking in social psychology. Is like, how do we need to know who we are and who other people are as actors to engage in the social world. We need to know that. Now, social psychology has given us this language of stereotypes, which are bits of knowledge of a group membership, of who we are and the characteristics that go along with it, etc., etc. They're vitally important for us living our lives, and yet they are taboo. You can't go around sort of uttering racist stereotypes, etc. And yet, how do they still do the work of guiding behavior, guiding action? So this is where the notion of stereotyping by implication is, because they are common sense, because you and I share the stereotype. Well, we can't be 100% sure. We have to probe and have a little dance over here. But, when we sort of know, oh, we're talking about that, oh yes, I know what you're talking about, we don't actually have to mention the stereotype and articulate it in all of its, what I say, the florid detail. We don't have to say things like librarians are bookish and quiet. This is the example that I often use. We can sort of have a kind of common sense about our librarians, then we can talk about the librarian over there, you know what I mean, that explains that, and that explains why I behave like this, etc. So the stereotype by implication is the way in which stereotypes as shared knowledge in the kind of background to life animate us or allow us to coordinate our activities and our opinions, etc., in a certain way that allows us, that stereotype, to do the work that it's designed to do. In other words, to prop up forms of inequality, etc., without it actually ever becoming explicit. And I think that's a very important way, which is, social psychology misses that, because they ask you, list your stereotypes. They require it always to be explicit.
Yeah, but then there is an implicit part.
Yes.
Which brings me to the next point, and I know there are a lot of people who write about racism, race. Then you came up with a nice concept, race travel.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna torn between. I'm not entirely sure what the difference is between that race travel and stereotyping by implication. Do they have a little bit of similarity?
Very much so. Very much so. So race trouble is exactly that these ideas about race they're part of common sense. They are doing work all the time, not explicitly. Sometimes it becomes explicit, but when it becomes explicit, oh, you're being racist or that, then a different form of life starts happening. There's a different kind of engagement, very defensive, denial, etc., etc. But most often, ideas about race are operating in the background the whole time. And so we live in a world that's entirely racialized, that continues to be racialized, and yet people aren't talking about race the whole time. And so, yes, these ideas about what's happening in the kind of the background or the backcloth to life is vitally important in racial. And we get a sense, hey, am I being racialized here? Is this at play? Or, ooh, I hope they don't think I'm like that. So there's all this. That's why I use the notion of race trouble. It's like, it's sort of in the background. Now, a lot of the people that have reviewed race trouble they accuse the book of wanting to get rid of the idea of racism, or reifying race, saying or using these same more race categories. But the basic point is that you can't understand the book without this notion of stereotyping by implication, because what I'm trying to argue, or what we're trying to argue, is that these ideas about race are things that people are using all the time. You can't by an edict get people to stop using it. You can try, but even when you do that, you start becoming racialized. It produces race trouble of its own kind.
So you call a spade a spade?
Well, I think so. And it's been interesting to see how the book's been reviewed, because it's been quite it's a bitter pill to swallow.
But have you received reviews?
There have been 5 reviews so far.
So it's great. Yeah, it's great. And they are completely different.
They range from and then different contexts. Some of them are South African, some of them are overseas. One's ethnic and racial studies, theory and psychology, PINS, psychology and society.
Do you think the context makes it different for people to come up with different ideas and reviews? Like a guy from Britain or from America and a reviewer from South Africa?
I've spoken to some people from the States that have read the book, and they, I think they do get a slightly different take on it, but I don't know if I think these kinds of ideas are troubling no matter where you are. Race is a trouble, and sort of engaging with issues of race is troubling. I don't know how to answer it.
You're very strong theoretically. So, Kev, can I ask you, I know maybe it may sound difficult, but how do you translate theory into everyday living for you as Kevin? You read this theory about race, stereotypes, prejudice, and what we need to do